Hello everybody, we're back here on the Orbital Farms, Army Simulator 17, this wonderful map full of Bill created, kind of for the real-life namesake of the farm, Lone Oak Farms. Named for that oak tree sitting up there at the top of the hill. Oh, and here the combine's going back over. I think this is a trick of forced play. Maybe a super narrow little windrow they had to do for the exact dimensions of the field, but obviously it isn't going to pick any of that up. It all would have been picked up on the previous round, so we'll just let him go. No harm in letting him finish the course. In real life, he'd be picking up all that straw, but not really getting any seed out of it. Although, you know what's interesting, maybe I'll comment on that here now as I just think about that, because there are certain varieties of grass that you would combine more than once. I can't, forgive me if I've mentioned this before in a video, I don't remember, but bent grass is one of those varieties. It's extremely hard to thresh. Bent grass is kind of a shorter grass, if you will, and the seed is just very tough, very stick to it, if you will, and hard to come out of the seed head. It's one of the few varieties you don't have to windrow at night. Generally you can windrow it during the day because there's no fear of the seeds falling out of the seed head. But when you thresh it, one interesting thing there is, even there was a previous video where we talked about the differences in conventional threshing versus a rotary combine and kind of looked at some diagrams and all that. There is some heavy hunks of steel moving at high velocity and speed inside these combines that, to my mind, beat the living stuffing out of the straw, out of the seeds to try to get it out. One would think that nothing could survive going to do that unthreshed, and yet it happens. And where it happens is with bent grass in particular. So not only can you thresh it during the middle of the day, or excuse me, windrow it in the middle of the day and lay it down for harvest, but sometimes, depending on the situation, it can be combined up to 3 times. I think you could even combine it more times if you wish, but I think at a point there's diminishing returns, if you will. So we used to have a field of bent grass by our home, I recall correctly. This wasn't Lone Oak Farms, it's where we live currently. And I remember that it was windrowed, and the combines came out, and they did it at least twice. These were New Holland combines, as I recall. But that stuff thrashes so hard, you can take it through the combine twice and still get seed out of it. Enough seed that it justifies doing it that second time. And like I say, sometimes I've even heard of it being done a third time. Probably all depends on particular conditions at any given time. Let me go back to, alright, here's my little trailer coming out here to catch up. Years ago when I got out of college, this would have been 96, the years don't matter, but I worked for an accounting firm as one of the international firms up in Portland, Oregon, and they hire all sorts of people, and it just so happened they hired, within a couple of years, they hired somebody off a farm, a grassy farm, and I still remember her. Her father owned a grassy farm in a different area of the Willamette Valley from where Lone Oak Farms is. I guess it'd be kind of out that way, if you will, way off in the distance, is where her family's farm was. But apparently he had a lot of bent grass. I remember her telling me she would help with the combining process. She said they would drive 0.9 miles per hour. Not even a mile per hour, and this is how slowly they would move in the field to harvest that grass. And she confirmed that, yeah, sometimes it was combined multiple times. So just one of those differences in types of grass. I mean, you see all kinds with the types of grass that are grown in the valley here. And fortunately, like I say, we never really did. I say fortunately, what does it matter? It didn't happen to be the crop that my grandparents or my uncles grew. Like I said before, they grew primarily fine fescues. More recently, it's ryegrass, and they did tall fescue in there a time or two. And now more recently, they are into radish seed, um, and they also, maybe I need to show some pictures of this. More recently, too, they branched out. Hold on a sec. I wasn't planning to do this, but I'm going to go look at some pictures here if I can find them. Got to locate where I put them. Is it here? I think it was. Oh, maybe it was the next day, the next weekend. They are now raising some flowers, and there's the oak tree. I think everybody knows where that is, and kind of in game, we're harvesting this field over here, of course, which has grass seed. Actually, this right here, well, this is apparently a 60-acre parcel, I think, and my cousin was telling me that they have 15-acre strips in here where they have planted flowers. Um, oops. And I remember the names of. Why isn't it advancing it for me? Oh, maybe there is another picture. This is another type here. He told me the names of these, and I dutifully wrote them down somewheres, but I don't know where they are. Maybe it was on the previous time. This was a recent weekend I was up there. Okay, you can't really see it very well. It's a mix of bachelor buttons. Again, that's a lone oak tree. This is a week before those other pictures you saw. So you can see the bachelor buttons here, but suffice it to say, there are several kinds of flowers that they are growing in there now. And let me see if there was some other pictures. This maybe is a close-up of one of the flowers that's in there. Maybe somebody knows what that is and can say in the comments. That's kind of on the corner. And there's kind of the field of them. This is a week before. That's more of a close-up. It seems like there's more hand labor involved with the flowers, but basically the goal is the same as they have with the grass seed. They're raising these flowers so they can produce seed, and seed that homeowner somebody can scatter them and plant them in their flower beds or whatever. But it is unique. I don't know that they've ever tried flowers before. There are a number of flowers grown in the area by some other farmers. So in the pictures I just showed, of course, would be in this field over here, 4 strips with different kinds of flowers. I did notice when I was out there, there's a row of bee boxes kind of along here. Anytime you got flowers, unlike the grass, which pollinates with the wind, the flowers, you've got to have bees, or else your crop will suffer because you won't get as good of pollination as if you didn't have them. There's actually a lot of crops in the Willamette Valley. I mean, everybody knows about the honeybee, right? I mean, we know they're critical to the world food supply and that kind of thing. But oftentimes, it isn't just that the honeybee is out there randomly doing its job. Sometimes to a farmer, it is one of the cost of inputs, if you will, for their crop, to where you either hire somebody to bring you some bees in, or you're not going to have a crop hardly at all, because everything you put out there, it isn't going to pollinate effectively. It may pollinate some, but you aren't going to get near the results that you would if you spent a little bit of money and paid a beekeeper to bring some hives out for you. And sometimes, I mean, maybe a sizable quantity of hives. I think they try to figure that out by acre as to how many you need to cover it effectively. So it'll be, you may spend a few thousand getting your field covered, but it's one of those costs that compounds itself by a lot. So whether it's flowers, I mean, there are some berry growers in the area, whether it's like the caneberries, blackberries, raspberries, blueberries, and all these things. It's very critical that they have bees brought in to help them pollinate, or else their crop is way smaller than what it otherwise would be. Well, so my uncles traditionally haven't had to hire an apiary to bring hives out, so it's kind of interesting to be up there to see, the differences, things that are happening up there. I'm going to go back to my combo here. So there's flowers coming in here, and I was walking up there recently. At some point I may show it. I walked all around these fields over here, and I have some pictures. You can see the contrast from real life versus how it is in here. But it was interesting for me to see. I mean, there's grass seed over here, there's some grass seed over here, but there was a field of crimson clover in there too. And of course, that guy had all of his bees over there buzzing away. Um, Bees kind of make me a little nervous, so I was real careful walking by those fields. But just seeing the variety, and and also in these fields over here, there's now a hazelnut orchard over here. There's a vineyard over here. Don't know that they're putting. You can't see the red buildings down here. Probably their clip distances. I don't know if they're putting in a winery here, or just where they're taking all the grapes. But what a change! I mean, I remember years where this was wheat, where this was grass seed. Uh, there was even Christmas trees in here for a while. Years ago, there was meadow foam. That's kind of another crop that's periodically grown in the area. It looks so beautiful in the spring, when it's pollinating and its flowers are out. It's brilliant white, almost hurts your eyes to look at it. They call them meadow foam, and it's used in cosmetics and shampoos and all that kind of thing. So I've seen that grown over here. Just quite a variety, even up in this good old red clay dirt up in the hills. Rocky though it may be, it still can grow just about anything. So, it's one of my cousins who is a son of one of my uncles that's one of the owners of Lone Oak that's trying the flowers out. So hopefully that all works out for him, and yeah, maybe he found a new alternative to grass seed. It's always healthy for a farmer to have options and alternatives. It's a tough business, and any one year, the more concentrated you are on a particular crop, I mean, you can get really, really good at it, but you can also be vulnerable because you're too concentrated. And so having some alternatives is just healthy and helpful to a farmer. Truth be told, it's helpful and handy to all of us. If all we had was one skill to offer the workplace, well, our luck would be up if that skill was no longer in demand. So it's useful to know how to do other things too. Yeah, at some point, like I say, I'll try to show some pictures of those, maybe as we start farming some of these other fields over there. As I look over here, as I look at the tree line over here, in real life, there's a stream that kind of comes from a spring up in here somewhere, and then there's kind of a sharp ravine that goes down there, and the dim map didn't quite pick that up, and it's flatter over there than what it actually is in real life, and so there's quite a contrast. I know once you see those pictures, you'll see what I mean. That it's quite a bit steeper over there than appears and than appears on the map. Oops, I didn't mean to get out of the game. Ah, I did it again. Apologies. That's where my mouse cursor goes. I'm just looking at some of my notes over here. Oh, here's something else I could share. This goes back to something we would periodically do. We didn't do it every time when we were servicing the machines in the morning. Maybe once a week or something. In the John Deere combines, I don't know about this Fiat Agri, but in the combines, just before, that silly horseplay thing is in the way, but just before the feeder housing, hey tractor, you're in my way. Just before the feeder housing dumped the material into the cylinder, which on this combine would be right about here under where the operator sits. Right under there was what's called a rock box, and the rock box would take any heavy objects, primarily rocks, as they came up the feeder housing. If one of them survived, you wanted to protect your cylinder if you could, so you had kind of an indentation here, aka the rock box, where rocks could fall before they would just head into the cylinder and bust the thing up. I mean, I can imagine it wouldn't take much of a rock, and like I say, these are chunks of steel moving at very high speed, and you put a rock in there and it's going to do significant damage, to your machinery. So obviously you didn't want that to happen. So John Deere and maybe some other manufacturers designed something into the setup so that the rocks would fall just before it would hit the cylinder. Well, periodically when we were servicing the machines, like I say, maybe once a week, we would clean the rock box out. And it isn't just rocks that would end up in there. You find, pieces of wood, anything that would be heavier than the straw or whatever that you were pulling in the machine could potentially end up in the box. I don't remember if there were things like, cans or bottles, those kinds of things. Most of the time there wasn't that kind of thing in the field, but anything heavier than the straw would end up in there. Sometimes just dirt, some heavy dirt would end up in there. Well, so we would go under there, and there was a latch you could open, and you would reach up in there and pull all this crimple out and marvel at all the treasures you found and clean it out and be done, and you move on. And so one morning while servicing the machines, I was given this job, and one of my uncles told me to go underneath to clean them out, and at the time we had 3 machines, so I started in the back and went under, and I did just an ad. I did it first machine, opened her up, cleaned her out, did it the second machine, did the same thing. Then I got up to the third machine, which I believe was the 8820, which was under 8820. And that one was a bit wider. I almost think the throat of that thing is 6 feet. Is the feeder housing 6 feet wide? I can't remember. It was quite a bit wider than the other one, so maybe it took a little bit longer. All I know is I was under the combine, and you're kind of in a vulnerable position. You're in back of the header, so if the header fell off, it wouldn't necessarily hit you, or I don't know. It depends on where your legs would be. But you do have, when you open this box, your hands are basically right up in the cylinder, which, remember, this is where all the threshing happens. And so, when the machine's off, no big deal. Well, at some point during this, I remember the combine getting turned on. And what I thought when I was underneath there is like, well, okay, no big deal. My uncle told me to go down here and do this, so he knows I'm here. Whoever's driving this machine or just turned it on probably is just, getting the engine warmed up, getting it ready to go for the day, but no problem. They know I'm down here. So I continued pulling material out, and all of a sudden at some point, the threshing mechanism turned on. And you'd always engage that in idle anyways. The machine was in idle, and someone up top had, pushed the lever forward to engage the separator, which turned on the cylinder, the feeder housing, everything. And there my hands were up in that, pulling rocks and all the crud out of the rock box and whatnot, like I've been told. And I was just about done at that point. And again, I was a little surprised, but I thought, well, maybe my uncles, they know I'm down here, right? So they probably figured, well, even though my hands are up in there, um, maybe I would know to listen to the machine, which I had, and I wouldn't just foolishly stick my hands up there to get them chopped off, that I would know better, which I did. But I tell you, my hand could have been up there right when they turned it on. It could have grabbed me. It could have ran me through the machine and turned me into bloody pulp. But it didn't, and I finished what I was doing. I latched the thing up and I crawled out from under the combine, and I may have even crawled out in front of the front tire. That I don't remember in particular. What I do know is it shocked the daylights out of my uncle, or one or two of them. I mean, this was no, they did not know or had forgotten that I was under there. Either they forgot they sent me under there, or thought I was already done, or was out of the way. Whatever it was, nobody knew I was under this combine. And, it's one of those close calls you have on a farm. He could have driven off at any time, revved the thing up. For whatever reason, he was still in idle, taking his time before moving out. And it allowed me time to get out of there. But maybe an extra minute under there. I don't know, what the timing was. But, I look back on things like that, and there's lots of people that have farming accidents, or accidents period, where the difference of a split second can make all the difference in the world as to whether you get hurt or not, or live or die. And there was a number of times things happened on the farm. I think I mentioned one in another video where I was falling off a stack of bales and almost impaling myself, or could have cracked my skull on the foundation, and it didn't. It's like, my guardian angel or whatever was just taking care of me that particular day. And I'm just thankful. I have all my fingers. Nothing bad happened, and I'm just thankful. But it's just one of those things that could have turned out so differently. And I don't even know if I'd be here. I could have been squashed flat under a tire, and would never be making these videos or see kind of what came. The map would have never been made, if that would have happened, presumably. So just one of those things, and I'd be curious, if people are willing to share. It's always interesting to me. I don't know why. Maybe it's morbid curiosity to hear other people and their times when maybe they had a close call. I'd be particularly interested to hear, in a farming context, if there was something you did, a mistake you made, or something that just happened and you were caught in the middle of it, and, kind of what happened with it. And don't have to look very far, to see where there was life-ending injuries, that happened on the farm. And one of them was one of my little cousins. I say little because she was little when it happened. I think she was, 2 years old, maybe 4. I don't recall. And this happened in Illinois. And so I never met her that I recall. She was just a little girl, belonged to another aunt and uncle of mine that lived back there. And it was harvest, in the harvest field, another family operation, and they took, someone took their little girl to the field. I think someone was bringing meals out to the combine operators and those working in the field, which is a very common thing on a family farm, to have a meal brought out to you at certain times. And, so just the normal stuff you would do. And it must have been a 4-year-old, because I think a 4-year-old maybe be a little more mobile than a 2-year-old, but honestly I don't remember. She got out of the truck, and whoever was in charge of watching her had looked away for the wrong amount of time, and there was a combine that came near, and my little cousin got, it was the back tire, I think, that ran over her neck. And it's interesting how it did it. You know, this is like I mentioned earlier, you know, a split second for her, even a half an inch would have probably made the difference between life and death. As I understand it, the tire barely nicked her neck and it pinched the carotid artery in her neck. So, as I understand it, I was a little kid when all this happened too, so I didn't see it with the eyes. But as I understand it, you know, you wouldn't know looking at her that anything was wrong at all. It just appeared she was sleeping, except for maybe this welt on the side of her neck where the tire ran over and just pinched her carotid artery and took her life from her. But like I say, that's where like a half inch would have made all the difference in the world, even though it was so close. But yeah, just an innocent little child got nailed, and I don't know whose responsibility it was to see to the child. Oh, and no judgment for me on that. I mean, you know, probably there's enough judgment that person puts on their own selves when that happens. This would have been to their maybe their niece or nephew when this happened. Just a tragic, tragic thing to have happen. And so, like I say, I don't know. There's lots of tragedy that happens out there in life. You know, maybe you've experienced some, maybe your family has, you know, or close calls. You know, maybe there's been something where it turned out okay, but you know, when you went back and thought about it, you know, it practically gives you the willies thinking about what could have happened. You know, if the wrong or if a different set of circumstances, you know, had occurred. So I guess maybe it's as simple as we all have our appointed time that we're going to be called out of life, and maybe for her that was her time. And the combine operator never saw her, never heard her, nothing. So was oblivious that this had happened until someone found her lying in the straw or whatever it was that were harvesting out of it. That I don't recall those details. Just a tragic thing. And you know, that aunt and uncle, they're very dear to me. They eventually moved out here from Illinois, and I think they exhumed their daughter, and they reburied her out here, where they could have her remains closer to them. And it's just one of those things, you know, you wonder how life would have been if that person would have lived and what they would have done. And now, I mean, she probably, yeah, she would be married, she'd probably have children, there'd be grandchildren for my aunt and uncle, and, you know, it just never happened. And just one of those things. That's what we call life. I'm just thankful that nothing bad happened to me when I was under the combine, and what I probably should have done in retrospect, if I'm ever in that situation again, what I will do is the moment the key is turned on in that machine, I'm going to be getting out from under it. There's no sense staying under there, because you never know who turned the key on up there. And it just, yeah, life is too short. You need to go check that out. That reminds me too of an incident, a couple of them with my grandfather. You know, as I think about Mono Farms, years before I worked up there, you know, we periodically come up as a family, and there'd be times when I would come up and ride a combine or something with Grandpa. And, you know, I remember him. There's a field they have called the Schoolhouse Field. I think so named because it was close to a schoolhouse where my father and some of his siblings, you know, went to grade school. But we were over there, and I was kind of sitting between his legs, and he let me hold the steering wheel. So I have that. That's an early memory of being with Grandpa on the combine. And then a later one in another field. I think he was harvesting wheat. Both times, actually. Not that that matters. But there was, he got out of the combine for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe he was going to check the settings of the machine, make sure it was threshing, doing what it was supposed to do. And of course, he gave me the old talk, that the adults would do, don't touch nothing. And I was a curious boy, but I at least had enough sense to know I should not touch nothing, just like your grandpa said. And I didn't. And all of a sudden, Grandpa comes flying back into the combine and he chews me out. Don't remember how old I was. I was just a little tyke because he thought I had touched something. He had went down below the machine and he said he heard something grind, and I have no idea what he heard. Probably was a hydrostat drives maybe were doing what they do, moaning a little bit. We kind of were on a hill and it was he had parked us crossways. Maybe it was the hydrostat drives were still forward a little bit. I don't think we were moving or anything. But yeah, he came flying up the air and he accused me of hitting something, and I said, Grandpa, I didn't. Well, he didn't believe me, and I don't know that I ever talked to him later on in life. It doesn't matter at this point. I just remember as a kid, when you genuinely didn't do anything wrong, how much it hurts when you're accused of doing something wrong. And it's like, I not this time I didn't. I gotta own all the times when I did screw up, but this wasn't one of them. But but Grandpa, being an adult, he was just looking out. I mean, with an ounce of common sense. When he heard the thing grind, his instincts were to get out of the situation and get back up to the cab because he thought something had moved or changed. So it's those kinds of things that, may save your life, when it comes to farm machinery or lots of things maybe, versus not or doing what I did and not paying attention to that or just assuming that things were okay when they really weren't. Oh my goodness. Another half hour has rolled on by, and are we about halfway done with this field? Yeah, maybe we are. With the outer rounds and the windrows that are left in here, I think we're about halfway done with this field. So I'll tell you what, I'm still losing money. I'm going to call the episode here. Thank you so much for stopping by to listen. Hope you enjoy our little bit of farming here on Lone Oak Farms, Farming Simulator 17. Thanks for stopping by. Have a great day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye for now.